Hi everyone, and welcome to Kids In Museum Takeover Day. So here we are. My name is Kate and I am from the London Transport Museum. Now at the London Transport Museum, we tell the stories of how people have traveled around in the past, how we travel around right now, and how we might travel around in the future. And today it's the future we really want to take a closer look at, because our planet is in danger because of global warming and the climate crisis. And we need to make changes all around the world to help save the environment. And at the Transport Museum, we believe that it is the small eco changes that you can make at home, as well as the way that we travel around, that can make a big impact and help us have a greener, healthier planet in the future. Now, because it's Kids in Museums Takeover Day, we have been working with some eco change makers here at Wembley Primary School. We have our Year 5 eco change makers in the room, and they've been doing lots of investigating and exploring. And the more they've investigated, the more they've come up with questions they'd like the answers to. And one of the big questions they wanted to get the answers to is what the grown-ups are doing to make an impact. So today, as you can see, Year 5 has taken over the boardroom and they are ready with their hard questions to get some answers from our grown-ups. But first, I'm going to come over here with two of our eco change makers. There we go. Would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hi.
Hi. Hi. Now, I'm going to ask you both, if you could tell me one change that you've made since you've started learning more about the climate crisis. What's one change you've made in your life? Would you like to tell me first?
I've been planting more plants because it cleans the air and it provides us more oxygen.
Brilliant. You've been planting more plants at home because it helps the air get cleaner and gives us more oxygen. Can you tell me what your favorite plant is?
A sunflower.
A sunflower. Fantastic. So sunflowers to help us have a greener, healthier planet. And hello there. Can you tell me one thing you've started changing at home to make a difference to the environment?
I recently started walking to school because of the petrol and diesel car giving a pollution to the world.
Yeah, very good. So you've started walking to school instead of getting a car because you've got a diesel car and you are worried about the emissions, coming out the other end. Fantastic changes. So you can see over here at Wembley, we've already started making some changes to help have a cleaner environment. Now, I was super inspired by Year 5. So I got on the phone to some transport experts and I set them the challenge of answering Year 5's questions to see if they were up to facing some really, really tough questions and giving us some real honest answers. So everyone joining from your schools, I'd like you to meet our panelists. I'll go around the room and give you a chance to introduce yourselves to our eco change makers and to everyone joining us live. So I'm going to go around the room. Let's start with Sam. Sam, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I'm Sam. I work for Transport for London as Head of Corporate Environment, and we try to improve the environment by reducing emissions, getting everyone into electric vehicles, getting people walking and cycling, and also making London greener by planting more trees.
Brilliant. And also from TfL, we have Obi. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Obi Nwafor. I am the Senior Operating Officer for London Underground. Well, my role is basically trying to solve problems anytime you have an emergency. So think of every time a train has broken down, or anytime you've had a terrorist attack, anytime anything breaks, my job is to step in, work with the experts, and get things fixed. The best way to understand what I do is all of the underground's a big choir, and each person has a different skill set. And I'm the choir master. I get all of us to sing together and hit the right notes. So next time you hear harmony, think Obi. Thank you.
Fantastic, Obi. And then we'll also go from TfL. We've got Sophie joining us. Sophie, can I get you to introduce yourself next?
Hi everyone, so I'm Sophie and I also work for TfL. So I currently am head of operations on the Docklands Light Railway, which is all the way over the other side of London in Canary Wharf. And we basically, we've got pretty cool railway because we don't have drivers on ours. And you can pretend to be a driver like the top of a red bus on our network, which is quite fun. But a little closer to home, my other job a few years ago was head of the Metropolitan Line operation. So that's a bit closer to Wembley, and I hope some of you have gone on that line. And I definitely call Obi to be our choir master when the Met line goes down. So yeah, he's very helpful in fixing it. So hi, nice to meet you all.
Brilliant. And then we've also got 3 more panelists who are joining us from some other transport organizations. So Munat, can I get you to introduce yourself next?
Hi everyone, I'm Munat and I work for Soprasteria as a sustainability consultant. So what my role is just to basically talk to different organizations and companies, and we figure out together how they can be more environmentally friendly and how to help their communities as well. So we sit down and we come up with a plan on how they can help the planet and people as well.
Brilliant. And Anna, can I get you to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I'm Anna Allwright. I work for Cubic Transportation Systems. We're a transport technology company that works really closely with people like Sam and Obi and Sophie at TfL to try and make people's day-to-day journeys easier. So in my role as a strategy specialist, I look at what's happening right now and what we think might happen in the future, trends like climate change, and I work with our team to try and figure out how we can make our technologies more sustainable and how we can make your journeys better every day.
Brilliant. And our final panelist, Louise, can I head over to you as well to introduce yourself?
Yep, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Louise. I am a civil engineer from Mott MacDonald. So I work for a big civil engineering company, but I am based in the transport sector. So I help design railways, design bridges, design other structures associated with the transport sector.
Brilliant. So we've met all of our panelists. We're feeling pretty excited. Are you feeling excited, eco change makers?
Yes.
Are you ready to ask your questions?
Yes.
Brilliant. And all of you joining us from your classrooms as well. At the end of our questions, it'll be your turn to ask some questions too. So if throughout our Q&A, you come up with your own questions, you can pop those in the chat for me and I'll come back to them at the end and you can ask our panelists the questions you've got as well. So have a think whilst you're listening. And if anything pops up, you can tell your teacher and your teacher can type it to us in the chat and we'll get to those at the end. But we're going to head over for our very first question. All righty. Hi. So our first question is going to be for Obi. What would you like to ask?
Other than buying electric car, what can you do to make sure our roads aren't causing pollution?
Very good. Oh,
that is a fantastic question. There's loads you can do, and I'm sure there's loads you've been told in school that you can get on with. But I'm going to keep the message very simple. There's 3 things I would like you to do. The first is I would like you to walk. The second, I want you to walk a bit more. And the third, I want you to walk even further. Do you get the message? I have one overriding principle. Please walk more. And I can talk to you about how great it is for pollution, but there's more than that. With your walking, you build communities. The only time I get to see my neighbor is when I walk around and say hello to him. And without that, I would have no society. Another part is science has proven that the more you walk, the longer you live. So we want you to have, children, great-grandchildren, and be around for much longer and be with them as well. But for me, the most important thing about walking is the amount of introspection. And what that means is the amount of time you spend being quiet with yourself, understanding who you are, understanding your purpose, and understanding why we're all here today, trying to make this world work. So pollution and climate change are big things, but they're not an end to themselves. We want to be in a sustainable planet where we look after each other, and walking makes that happen. So if there's one thing I want you to leave this session with, walk. Thank you.
Walking sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Brilliant. Let's find out our next question. Off the back of that for Obi, yeah.
Hello. What does the TfL do to help?
Do you want to say it again nice and loud?
What does the TfL do to help?
Yeah, what is TfL doing to help?
Wow. There's a whole list of things we're doing, but I'll keep it simple by saying the two ways in which we're changing things. And I think at some point I would like to bring Sam into this conversation because he is spearheading all we are doing as far as change. But in my humble observance of what we've done so far, we are improving ourselves as a transport network, and we're also improving policy. So as far as being a transport network, our trains have 0 emissions at point of use. So every time you catch a train, there is no emissions. So that's a great starting point. But what we're hoping to do is that we get to the same place with buses. So at some point in about 10 or 15 years, we want to be in a position where all our buses, like our trains, don't emit any dangerous gases. In addition to that, we want to encourage electric car use. So you would see more and more posts where you can charge your cars safely and sustainably. And we want to increase that across London. We're also creating alternatives. We want people to ride bikes and we want people to walk. And that's as far as the things we're doing to improve the system. The other thing, which is making a big change, is what we're doing as far as policies. So one example is the ULEZ. And I won't go into detail of what the ULEZ is, but what we're doing is we're stopping big, heavy polluting cars coming to London. And we're increasing the area where you have cleaner and better air. And that's all down to us putting new policies in place to make that happen. And also, we have campaigns like going out to schools, like we're doing today, to make sure people like yourselves, get on your bikes and get walking even more. One thing you'll find with all my answers is a consistent theme of getting on your feet and walking. I hope that answers your question.
Brilliant. I think that does. Would you say that does?
Yeah.
Yeah? You're feeling good? Great. Because it's interesting you suggested we talk to Sam, because I think our next question might be for him. Would you like to ask your question?
Sam, do you think this is good enough? How much better are electricity vehicles?
Yeah, do you think what TfL's doing is good enough, and are electric vehicles better?
I think, thank you for your question. I think our focus is right, that it's about walking, cycling and public transport first. And then whatever vehicles are left, you want them to be as environmentally friendly as possible. And on that basis, electric vehicles are better because they don't have any pollution coming out of their exhaust pipes, because they don't have exhaust pipes. But also, if you look at the whole life of the vehicle, the greenhouse gases that come out of the construction of the vehicle, running the vehicle for its lifetime, and then the disposal of that vehicle and how much the materials are recycled, it has much less greenhouse gas emissions than diesel or petrol vehicles. There are still problems with them, which is why we want to have as few vehicles as possible, because you still get dust from the tires, you still get dust from the brakes, they still create a congested city that causes road safety problems and makes the roads more dangerous, and there's less space for planting trees and walking and cycling. So generally they are better, but they're not the best thing. The best thing is walking and cycling and public transport.
Sounds good. Do you reckon you'll be doing more walking then as well? Everyone's going to be walking nice and far by the end of today, that's for sure. All right. Do you want to ask your question?
Sophie, we know that one thing you are doing right now in your job is buying new trains for the DLR. How long will these last?
Hi, thanks for the question. So yes, so the DLR is coming up to around 30 years old. I might be a few years older than 30. And when we normally buy trains that last about 30 to 40 years. And so these new trains will also last around that time. So we're looking for these trains to last about 35 years. So we have to be really clever thinkers now to think about what we might want those trains to look like in 35 years time, and kind of what kind of people will be traveling on them and how we can make them more attractive to people use, so we can get more people using public transport.
Brilliant. There we go. So around 35 years for a train. That probably feels a pretty long time to all of our audience joining us live. It certainly feels like a long time to me as well. Do you have a follow-up question for Sophie?
Are they better for the environment?
So that is a really interesting question. And I actually had to go and speak to some clever train builder engineers to answer that, because I wasn't 100% sure. But actually, it's a tricky question, because actually they are heavier than our trains now. So they use more power. So it depends where we get their power from. So Sam is working with his clever colleagues to get us more green energy on TfL. So we're using better energy providers. But also the trains themselves, they're bigger because they can carry more people. And so the more people we can carry on our trains, the less people will be using their cars. So if you're not able to walk, because that is the best way, we can get more and more people onto our trains. So that's how we're helping the environment, by getting more people onto the system and making it a more comfortable journey for people.
Brilliant. There we go. So if you can't walk, hopefully you can get on a nice big train. And then if you've got one more question for Sophie.
What will happen to the old trains?
Again, Ginny, that's a great question that I also had to go and ask my clever train building friends about. So we do really clever things with our trains. You might see sometimes we give our trains, or sell our trains to people who make them into like bars. And I think there's a Victoria Line train somewhere in London, like on top of a building in a really obscure place that you can go to and have drinks in. But our DLR trains, we are going to take them to a special scrapyard, and they're going to be broken down, and everything that can be recycled will be recycled. Anything that we can sell or make into something else will be. And only the like very small bits are going to have to go to a rubbish dump somewhere. But we're going to make that as little as possible. And we're going to try and reuse and recycle as much as we can.
Fantastic. And of course, sometimes old trains get sent to us at the Transport Museum.
Yes, of course.
And become part of our collection and help us tell all of those important transport stories.
Yes, that's true.
Exactly. So if you want to check out some old trains, you know where to head. And I think we wanted to talk a little bit more about some of this stuff, yeah?
Yes. Speaking of how long things last, at school we do lots of recycling, including using food from our lunch hall, reusing paper, and recycling our rubbish.
There we go. I think that's a pretty impressive panel. That's some of the things that they're already doing here to reuse and recycle things. So they're recycling some of their train bits, but over here at school, we're doing things as well for that. Well done. Brilliant job from our eco change makers. And I think we've got another question over here.
Louise, as a civil engineer who helps them build structures, how do you make sure the materials are sustainable?
There we go. For Louise, our engineer, can you tell us about sustainable materials?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's a big challenge for our industry because, well, our main material that we use is concrete. Concrete's in everything, and one sort of part of concrete is cement, and unfortunately, producing cement is really, really like energy and carbon intensive. So to put that into perspective, transport and planes are the worst for carbon, and then actually producing cement is the third worst in the entire world. So it just shows you how bad cement is in our concrete structures. So one of the ways that my industry and my role is changing is by finding alternatives to cement, so recycled alternatives, and this is sort of where like the research and smart people find out what sort of low carbon things we can do. But with the bigger picture, it's sort of looking, can we sort of source materials locally? So we don't have to have HGVs, transporting materials up and down the country and producing all that carbon from their big lorries. We're also looking at, can we sort of get materials to site at off-peak times so they're not sitting in traffic. So there's a lot we can do to make things more sustainable, and it's not just about using materials like wood or recycled materials. There's a whole big process where we're trying to make every small bit of the construction industry just that little bit more sustainable.
There we go. How does that sound?
Pretty good.
Yeah. Thinking about something other than concrete. There we go. And I'm sure some of you might have started to figure out, changing the way we do things is really important. One of the things that's helped us do things differently is technology. So we've got some more questions about technology over here.
What we want to know is how technology is helping us travel differently.
Brilliant. Anna, we were wondering if you could help us with that one.
Sure, that is an awesome question. And I'm going to answer in two parts. So the first way technology is helping us travel differently is it's helping us make our transport networks so much smarter and more connected. So we don't know how to give you transport services that you want to use unless we understand how you're traveling, why you're traveling, when you're traveling, and what modes you're using. And so now we have technology and sensors across our entire transport network that can allow us to see, people's travel preferences. And it helps people like Obi make sure the trains run on time. It helps people like Sophie know, what train lines need to be delivering services where, so that you can make it to school on time, or you can make it to work, or you can go visit your friends. And then the other way technology is helping us travel differently is for you. Every day we use mobile phones, the internet, and we're getting used to a level of experience and convenience when we do these things. And that's raising the bar for us at transport companies to not just compete against how do we make the best transport system, but we now have to compete with Netflix, Amazon, and the convenience that you have there. And so when you're wanting to go out and use public transport, you can now look at an app and figure out when the best route is, where I can walk to save carbon, where I can maybe use my bike instead. But if I can't ride my bike and I can't walk, which public transport service is going to be the easiest? And then you can use smart technologies like your Oyster card, so that you then don't have to buy multiple different tickets. It's helping us make your journeys much, much easier. So that it is a more attractive option to take public transport than to jump in your car.
Sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. And we've got another technology question for Munat this time.
How does technology help us make better choices to save the planet?
That's a really good question. So I'll just follow on from what Anna said. So I work for a technology company, and what we do is basically use technology to try and solve the world's problems. So one of the things we've done is we've developed an app, and you can put in your destination, and it will tell you, if there are other people that are going to the same place as you, so you can carpool, which just means you can share a car rather than all taking individual cars. How much carbon emissions there are if you do choose to drive versus cycling or walking or taking the trains. So it helps you make better decisions. So that's a really huge way technology helps. And in general, there's another app we've got called Recycle, and recycling can be quite confusing. You don't know what goes where, and different places have different rules. So this app, you just scan whatever item you're holding that you want to throw away, and it will tell you exactly what bin you need to put it in, and how much carbon you're saving by not putting it in the waste bin and recycling instead. So yeah, technology plays a huge part in helping.
Wow, that sounds pretty cool. Maybe we could get one of those apps at school. Does that sound like a good idea? Yeah, brilliant. Now we're going to have some open questions to our panel, and we're going to head over here to ask our very first one.
In what ways have you managed to change the environment and protect your family and friends?
So a bit of a personal question there. What ways have you managed to change the environment to protect your family and friends? Does anyone on the panel want to dive in first for that one?
I picked up.
Oh, there we go. I think Sophie's feeling keen. Sophie, do you want to give us an answer to that?
Hi, yes. So I live in Tooting in southwest London, and we have loads and loads of cars and buses. And so I have found a route to cycle and scoot to my children's nursery and school. So we avoid the main roads and we don't drive and we don't get the bus anymore. We used to, but now I walk and they scoot and cycle, and we use all the back roads, and it's so much nicer. So there's no nasty fumes. And we also live by St George's Hospital, which has got the most beautiful gardens. So we go and cycle and scoot through the gardens, and it's kind of like what Obi and Sam were saying earlier. Like it's not only good for like our breathing and our health, but it's really lovely for like our mental well-being to kind of go and look at the pretty gardens every day.
There we go. That sounds pretty good. Satisfied? Do we have anyone else who wanted to come in on that one? No, that's all right. We're going to head to our next question. Are you ready?
Yes.
Yeah.
What is your perfect London transport vision?
There we go. That's a good one. What does your perfect vision for London transport look like? Yes, Ovi, do you want to dive in on that?
Yeah, I would attempt this question in two parts. The first part I would give, it will be a watered down version of the real answer. And then the second part, I'm going to hand over to Sam. Only because I've heard Sam speak. I heard Sam speak a few days ago, and he is a very powerful, inspirational speaker with a very clear vision of where we need to head to. So I'm really proud that he's here on this conference to share that with you. So I'll start with my part. It's going to be very succinct. My vision, apart from the fact we want to be in a position to transport people in a green, safe, reliable, sustainable way, I would like us to make sure that we build the connections that those journeys make. And the best way to bring it to life for you is COVID gave us an idea of what lack of contact does. If you remember, we had all the shutdowns, we couldn't leave the house, you couldn't go to school. That was a really challenging time for all of us. My vision is the reverse of COVID. And what that means is I want us to be in a position where when the dust settles down on the pandemic, we're in a position where we do the reverse of the shutdowns. We're out and about every single day. And guess how we're doing that? We're doing that through sustainable travel, walking, or catching one of our trains. So if you ever think vision, it's reverse of the shutdowns. And that's mine. I'm going to hand over to Sam now for an even more sensible answer. Thank you.
Wow, Obi, that's very kind of you. Remind me to employ you as my hype man next time I go on stage. I think Obi answered it very well, because that's what I think. I think a perfect transport vision is one where you don't notice the transport. Instead, you see people and you see community. And that's why maximizing walking and cycling and using public transport and minimizing road vehicles helps you build that city that is a city of communities and people.
Brilliant. Very good. Did anyone else want to come in on that one? Or do we feel like we got a good answer? What do you think?
Yeah,
you think you got a good answer? Fantastic. And we've got one last question from our eco change makers before we head to our Q&A, which I can see has been building up all throughout this call. So well done, everyone participating at school. Do you want to ask our last question?
What can we as kids do?
So what can our kids do? Sam, would you like to start us off?
Thank you very much. So the first thing I'd say is climate change can be very worrying, and it can make you feel anxious and guilty. And I would say, please don't. We will solve climate change because everyone is going to help, like people like yourselves, eco change makers. And rather than feeling scared, I would feel excited about the change we're going to go through. We're going to transform and build a better future together. So that's the main message I'd give you. But in terms of advice, I'd say three things. First thing is to never stop questioning. Always try to explore the world, understand why things are the way they are and how they can be different. Don't just accept things, but be willing to change your mind as well. The second thing I'd say is more practical, and it's something that's not often talked about. So you understand very well about planting trees and recycling, walking, that's really important. But I'd also emphasize sharing. So the more you can share your toys, the more you can spend time with your friends, means you're buying less stuff, you're consuming less things, which means there's less rubbish in the world, and it means there's less greenhouse gas emissions. So anything like that in terms of art, play, that is actually helping the environment because you're doing something that's low impact and is free as well. And then the third thing is ask your parents what they can do. I think they can have a big impact, and if they see that you care, they'll care too.
There we go. Does that sound pretty good? Does anyone else want to come in and contribute to that answer? Yes, Sophie.
Sorry, issues with buttons there. Yeah, so I think that's a really good question. And a couple of things just adding in from what Sam said. I would nag your parents and carers and anyone who looks after you. Be like, why are we driving? Can we walk? Can we use public transport? And question your parents. My 5-year-old does it to me all the time. And she's really made me think about stuff, about how we can do things differently. And also kind of thinking about like sharing presents and like toys and stuff. Like Christmas is coming up, and maybe ask your parents for something secondhand. There's loads and loads of apps and like sale websites on Facebook and stuff. And like my children are mostly going to get secondhand toys for Christmas because they're too little and they can't even open a package. So like use someone else's stuff, and then you can give your things to other people, and it's a nice big sharing thing, and we don't have to buy new things.
Sounds brilliant. Does that sound good? Yeah, nagging your parents sound like fun. Did anyone else want to comment on that question? Yeah, Munat.
I'd also say you all have very important voices, and you can write to your MPs and your local council and make them, aware of issues you care about. So if you think, there's too many cars or people aren't recycling enough, write them a letter, and they have to, pay attention. And the more you nag them, the more likely they'll do something about it. So. Yeah.
There we go. It sounds like we've got a lot more grown-ups to be nagging. Does that sound good, Year 5?
Yeah.
Did anyone else want to come in on that one? Yeah, Ovi.
I would just like to say, I think my panelists have said it all, but I'm so proud of the fact that, you've got you youngsters taking control of what is your future. When I was your age, I had no idea of what was going out in the bigger world. And it's incidental, but because I've had an email exchange with Sam not too long ago about the prospects for the future. And I feel a lot brighter today because I've seen you guys being champions in such a powerful way that I have so much hope, not just for me, but for the future as well. So thank you so much for being the champions that you are.
Yeah, I think well done. I think that deserves a bit of a round of applause. Yeah, very good. Pat yourselves all on the back. Very good. And I'm going to come over to my final eco change maker for today. And you're going to let me know what was the most interesting thing you thought you heard today. Did you get some good answers?
Yes.
Did it make you think about how you could do things differently?
Yes.
And what are you most looking forward to doing differently? Walking some more, nagging your parents a bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have anything else you wanted to ask, or are you good? Do you think
good?
We've asked our questions? Are you happy with all of their answers?
Yeah.
Very good. Well done to all of our panelists. And what can you see over here? Have we got quite a few questions that have built up during this time, don't we? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to our panelists, I'm going to go quickly through some Q&A that has popped up in the chat as well. So if I can get you all to be relatively quick with your answers, because everyone watching back at school has also done a really good job. And we've got great questions coming in here. The first one I'm going to ask is, are there any positives to pollution?
No.
Well, we don't need our panelists. We've got an answer there. Panelists, would you all agree with that? Yeah, fantastic. Bang on. We didn't need them for that one. If cars are run by fuel that damages the environment, why aren't we just banning them altogether? Should we ask? Anna, would you like to tell us?
I think there's a really important equity element to why we can't just ban fuel-powered vehicles. At the moment, electric vehicles are still quite expensive. We don't have all the charging infrastructure in place. And if we ban them, we really risk, isolating people that can't afford to buy one. There are a lot of people out there that rely on their cars day to day to get to work, to get to school, to meet up with their communities. And as much as we would love them to walk, cycle, or use public transport instead, this isn't always an option. And if we're going to, ban fuel-powered vehicles, then we need to make sure that we do this in a way that is not going to negatively hurt people.
Pretty good answer. And next one, Munat, I might direct this to you. Can you tell us how you get a career in sustainability?
So I started way back in primary school, was part of, the Fair Trade Club, then went to secondary school, joined loads of volunteering clubs, uni as well. I just volunteered and just got involved in loads of community activities. And when it was time to apply for jobs, I could say all the things I had done, and I think my passion really shone through. And so just get involved, meet lots of people, and if you can, study it at uni, but it's not necessary. But yeah, just volunteer, show passion, and yeah.
So in a way, all of our eco change makers have already kind of started on that journey.
Exactly, yeah.
Fantastic. And we also have a question about how you get into engineering. Louise, I wonder if you could answer that one for us.
Yeah, sure. It's not really something you can think about, I think, when you're in primary school. Maybe in secondary school, when you sort of do a bit more maths and sciences. I think that's the main sort of pathway for getting into engineering. If you enjoy sort of wondering how the world around you works, and kind of like maths as well, that's like the main subjects you sort of need to be able to pursue engineering, like at university or at an apprentice level and things like that.
Brilliant. Do we all love maths?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the answer you want to hear, isn't it? Brilliant. Well done, everyone. We all love maths over here, so that sounds good to us. If you can have electric cars, can you have electric boats? Sam, yeah.
You certainly can have electric boats, and we've got electric boats. So the new Woolwich ferry are electrically powered. So yeah, you can have electric almost anything, and batteries are getting much better. The big problem with batteries is they're heavy, but each generation of new battery gets lighter and lighter. So we will at some point see electric planes, and we've already seen trial electric planes that are flying. So not long until everything is powered by batteries and electricity.
There we go. So there we go. Everything will be powered by electricity. And that's funny because our next question was, can you run a vehicle on solar power?
Yes, you can. There are vehicles that have done long distance challenges powered by solar. I think for day to day, we haven't seen that yet, but most people don't use their car very much. So there are new vehicles being developed where they have solar panels that charge the car slowly over time so that you've got enough energy in your battery when you do use it. But if you're a taxi driver driving around all day, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
All righty. And let's pick out a few last questions. How long would you say transport has been affecting climate change? Does anyone have any guesses? Sophie, yeah.
So from my knowledge of going to the Transport Museum a lot, I would actually say since transport started. So the Met Line was built around 160 years ago-ish now. And those first trains were not very good for the environment. They were steam trains and chucking out nasty, smelly coal fumes. And so that wasn't great for the environment. And then even before that, if I could be a bit rude, the poop from the horses that used to carry the carriages is also not great for the environment. So I would say transport has always had some kind of negative impact on the environment. But as Anna said earlier, there's a massive social benefit for bringing people together. And so you have to weigh the balances. But actually what we're doing now with clever people like the grown-ups on this call are thinking about how you can make it better for the future. But I think transport's always affected the environment.
There we go. And I'll give us one more question. After transport, what's the next thing that we should be focusing on to save our planet? Anyone want to take a guess? I know you're all transport experts, but yeah, Sam.
We just have to use less materials. So plastics is a big problem, but all of the stuff we consume and then throw away is a massive problem, and a problem that we need to deal with as much as we need to deal with climate change. So I'd encourage you all to think about that, how we can use less materials, how we can repurpose, how we can share.
There we go. Yeah, Anna, do you want to come in on that as well?
I was just going to say, I don't think we're ever going to be done. And that's not a bad thing. I think constantly trying to improve and make our cities better, our planet better, is always going to be a great thing. And so I don't think any of the grown-ups here today are ever going to go, we've solved transport, we're done. And we're going to need kids like you keeping at our heels and forcing us to do better and nagging us to do better. And there's always going to be ways that we can do that. And we're going to need bright minds like yours to help us do that as we go into the future.
There we go. I think that sounds pretty good and a pretty good place to wrap up for today. So Eco Changemakers, can I get you to say a big goodbye and thank you to our panel and to everyone who joined us live today. Bye. Brilliant. Thank you so much, panelists. Thank you so much, everyone who joined us live from your schools as well. We hope you got a lot out of today, and we hope to see you all on a bus, train, or walking in the future. We'll see you all for now. Bye.
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 Bye.